Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So a new poll came out today for 2026 and there's been a lot of talk about how Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble and Republicans are screwed ahead of the midterms. But a poll came out from a firm that has been generally accurate, Echelon Insights. And this covers, the past week or so. This is a new poll. It was released today, and it shows that despite the fact that it is a midterm year with a Republican president in the White House, Republicans and Democrats are neck and neck in the national generic ballot. This means that at a time when you have a lot of negative press, you might have like a response bias in favor of the Democrats as a result. You have the markets kind of in limbo right now. Still, the voters are not flocking to the Democrats, and you see a 50-50 split in this poll from Echelon Insights. And it kind of has me thinking about the midterms and where Republicans should really focus, because if we're really going to have a midterm year where Republicans can go out there and maybe, win some swing states, flip some, governorships, possibly even some House seats. Obviously, it's true the Democrats are going to flip some as well. The House is going to be hard fought on both sides, more likely than not. It kind of just reminded me of a couple of videos ago when I showed a map about the importance of where Republicans should spend their resources, which states should they prioritize ahead of the 2026 midterms. And I thought I would fill out the map again in this video, go in a little bit more detail, and kind of show what exactly the priorities are. We're going to go state by state, every single state where Republicans should prioritize. So hypothetically, we'll, use the state of Wyoming. If we have a state that is going to be tier 1 priority, means there's a lot going on. You're talking about a competitive governorship, a competitive Senate race, a competitive House race or two, it's going to be this color. If it's kind of in the middle, maybe there's some action going on, but not too much, it's going to be in this color. And if this is a state, and Wyoming is a state that fits in this category, that is relatively a safe state, there's no competitive races or anything like that, then it's going to be in the lean color, which means tier 3. The darker the red, the higher the priority the state should be for the Republicans. So make sure you guys understand that, because some people might try to misconstrue the map, because why would a state like California be like darker red than a state like Wyoming? It's about the priority. It's not about the way the state is going to go. In fact, safe red and safe blue states are going to end up being in that, light color, and we could fill out some of those. Hawaii, not a lot is going on in Hawaii. That's another state. You have Arkansas, again, safe state, not a lot's going on. Oklahoma is another example. Louisiana, Mississippi as well, not a lot's going on there. Or in Alabama, Tennessee's another example. Kentucky for the primary, and the same thing goes for Louisiana. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure, but still, there's not a ridiculous amount of competitive races in these states where it's like, a tug-of-war fight between the Republicans and Democrats, and that we know. As for the state of South Carolina, again, that's another one where there's not really a high priority. And actually, Florida is another state, believe it or not, where there's not a lot of competitive House races. In fact, there's no competitive House races. In fact, we could go to the Cook Political Report here. There's not really going to be any competitive races in the state of Florida. And the Senate race is technically open, even though you do have a new incumbent. The governorship is open, but Florida is just a red state now at this stage in the game. It's not going to be competitive. It's not going to be contested. Then you have Missouri. Then you have the state of Nebraska. We could fill these out by district for sure. You do have the 2nd district. That's going to be hotly contested. They're going to try to run Dan Osborne again as that independent for Senate. I don't think that he's going to do as well against Ricketts as he did in 2020. I think people are onto his shtick, but maybe it will force Republicans to divert some resources. So I'll put Nebraska in tier 2 statewide because of that and the 2nd district. Kansas, I would as well, just because of the fact that you might have some competitive statewide races. The Democrats have the governorship now. It's primed to flip back for sure. I'm not trying to say that it's not, but still finding a candidate and making sure they win against, the natural successor on the Democrat side, it's going to take some resources for sure, even though there's not really a competitive House race in the state of Kansas. So South Dakota, North Dakota, nothing's really going on there. Montana, nothing really competitive. Same thing goes for Idaho, as well as the state of Utah. So those states are already taken care of here. In terms of some of the other states that are not really going to be all that competitive, Maine's 1st district comes to mind, even though Maine at large is a little bit of a different story. And then you have pretty much all of the Northeast, New Jersey as well. I'm not including 2025 because it's true, the 2025 governor's map here, if you look at it, New Jersey could be a little bit competitive. Who knows? We could end up flipping that. I do think Virginia flips back. But speaking of Virginia, it doesn't really seem as if there's going to be a ridiculous amount in Virginia. Maybe you could say tier 2 because there's going to be some competitive House races there, but that's pretty much about it. Indiana, I probably would say not a lot is going on there. Maybe you could make a case for the 1st district, but because of turnout dynamics, I don't think it's going to necessarily flip into the Republican column. It's kind of an afterthought, but that is probably the closest race there. Then you have the state of Illinois, which again, a lot's going on there, but it's a safe blue state, even though Donald Trump did fairly well for a Republican in Illinois at the presidential level. Still, the governorship probably stays with the Democrats. And on top of that, the map is just gerrymandered perfectly for them to the point where you might have one, competitive district that probably is not going to flip to the point where Republicans would be better putting their resources elsewhere. And that is true. So also, we have the state of New Mexico. This one I'll put in tier 2 because it is true that you do have one competitive House race there. You have an open governorship. I think it stays with the Democrats. That is technically true, but maybe some resources could be poured in. It's just not top priority. Texas also, because it is true that there are going to be some competitive House races there. We don't know what's going to happen at the Senate level. Hopefully Ken Paxton wins his primary. He might win by less than Cornyn, but still I think he would win. Maybe you need some resources, but it's worth the upgrade. But you have some possibly competitive House races in South Texas. You look at Henry Cuellar. He might be going to jail for all we know, and that definitely would prime his race to flip, which was much closer than a lot of people anticipated in the state of Texas. Also, the state of Colorado, this one is crucial because you have a couple competitive House races. You want to make sure the top of the ticket is going to be a little bit closer at the governorship level. It's possible if the Democrats run one of their weaker candidates to succeed, Polis, who they seem to be running, I think he would win by 10, but 10 isn't that great in Colorado. I think it is, safe blue. But still, if you only win by 10, Gabe Evans may be able to hold on based on some of those coattails down ballot, and that much is true. Also, Arizona. This one's a priority 1 state because you look at Arizona, you have a governorship that is primed to possibly flip. You got to keep registering voters ahead of 2028 as well. And on top of that, you look at 1, 2, 3 races, which probably do go in the Republican column, but still it's you would like to make sure you spend money shoring those up because, if you sweep those 3 races, then your odds of winning the House are much, much higher than they are. Also, Nevada. If Republicans are truly neck and neck and want to go on offense, capitalize on trends, they possibly could flip a House seat, but I'm mainly talking about the governorship here as for why it's important. I don't think it's as much of a priority, but it's in the upper tier 2 of priorities because we know that incumbent governors rarely lose unless they're unpopular. Lombardo is not unpopular. He's going to win by more, in fact, much more, if anything, than he won by in 2022, even if Democrats put up a strong candidate. But the House races there, they're kind of long shot flips. And if it is a priority 1, that means Republicans are having a pretty good night elsewhere, which is true. Also, the state of California, this one is absolutely huge because, it is true that there's the most competitive House races. In fact, if the House is actually going to be this close, as Cook Political Report says, where Democrats need to win 2/3 of the toss-up races, and maybe Wisconsin's redistricting might lower that number a little bit, but still, it is true that Republicans are just kind of favored in a neutral environment in general. And if you talk about the top of the ticket effects, California, yeah, it's going to go blue at the governorship level. But if they put up like Kamala Harris as their nominee, it could get unnecessarily close. And what that would do is have this down ballot effect that is not very positive. And then you talk about a few of these races in California, even seats Democrats flipped in 2024, possibly reverting in 2026. And that could basically be the dagger in the Democrats' hopes of retaking the House if it does happen. So that is why California is a priority. A lot of competitive races there. Same thing with New York and that governorship. Could you possibly make that close again? Because Kathy Hochul's not popular. Yeah, again, she's favored, but still, she's not that popular. And there will be those down ballot effects that possibly could bail out some Republicans in some close races come 2026. So there's that. But it's like Delaware. There's nothing going on in Delaware. That one is just a state that the state party on the Republican side does not exist. Maryland, same thing. D.C., there's really nothing going on in D.C. Alaska, I'm going to put in tier 2 because Peltola might run for governor, possibly could make it close, but that's not why I'm doing this. It's mainly because of the fact that the ranked choice voting, a repeal initiative might be put on the ballot again, and the repeal crowd, which is us, we need to be more vocal and we need to, finance it better to make sure that we can be able to primary out Lisa Murkowski, who has basically installed this corrupt system to ensure her reelection. And that's a problem. So Rhode Island and Massachusetts, nothing's going on up there. Vermont, obviously nothing's going on up there. So we have a few more states to fill out here. Washington and Oregon, I would say that there's some possibly competitive races in the House in both of these states, but I don't think Chavez-DeRemer's district is going to flip back, especially now that Democrats ran a stronger candidate and won. I think Washington, because of the 3rd district, it's a possible flip. That one's not as high priority as some other tier 2 states, but I guess you could say it's in the mix for sure. So you have that. Maine 2nd district, that's going to be top priority. If Golden goes for governor, you could possibly flip that seat. I don't think he's going to go for Senate. And I think Susan Collins, you could say, is favored in the Senate in Maine, but I still would say that because you have a competitive Senate race there, it's still at least tier 2 priority for sure. Now, North Carolina, I would say that's tier 1 because you have the Senate race there, and if you hold that, you're at least probably holding steady at 53 Senate seats. On top of that, you do have a competitive House race there where Republicans could capitalize on turnout dynamics and flip Don Davis's seat if they're having a good night, which is a very good thing. Also, the state of Iowa, which in my last video, when we did this, we had it as tier 2. I think it's tier 1. Now, Kim Reynolds is not going for governor, which again, I think you could say that's a good thing because she was not popular and you have a strong Democrat challenger that is running. But I do think you'll have to pour some resources into some of those statewide races for sure. I mean, you have the Marionette Miller-Meeks seat. She might be primaried out, but you still have some competitive House races there, competitive statewide offices there. You got to make sure you invest in Iowa. As for Minnesota, I'd say tier 2. I don't think you're probably winning that Senate race, but who knows if, based on how the governorship goes, if Tim Walz goes for another term, maybe you make it close because he has lost popularity there for sure. Also, the state of Wisconsin, it's upper tier 2, borderline tier 1. In my opinion, I do think Van Orden will get drawn out, so you probably could make the case it'd be a net positive. You don't have to spend money on that seat. But then again, the governorship, we'll see what happens. Could Eric Hovde go for it? I think he'd be a great candidate if he does, but it is very difficult to beat incumbent governors. If anybody could beat Evers, it probably would be him. It's true Republicans have struggled in these off-year elections, but they did decent in 2022, so it's possible that they could compete in 2026, and Evers is going for a 3rd term, usually a little bit harder than if you're going for a 2nd term in terms of re-election. But Michigan, This one's crucial. Not only is the governorship a toss-up, if anything, lean R with John James and it being a three-way race, you also have a Senate race that is basically a toss-up as well. You have a competitive House race or two, or maybe even three, depending on how you look at it. Michigan is ground zero for the midterms. If you want to have a strong Rust Belt performance, build up a state party, Michigan is crucial, and Pennsylvania is also crucial. Now, I don't think Josh Shapiro's losing. I think that, honestly, if anything, lean D on 270 to win is a little bit generous to the Republicans, but if Stacey Garrity runs, I think she could make it close, and she wouldn't have to abandon her post to do so. On top of it, if it's close at the top of the ticket and closer than 2022, the down-ballot effects can be positive. You probably hold the 7th district at that point. You definitely hold the 8th, maybe the 10th as well. At that point, it's like you got to invest, but if you do well in Pennsylvania, that could be crucial to holding the House and building up the state party there as well. So the state of Ohio, this is one where you will probably have some sort of redistricting, which could benefit the Republicans, but they still would have to pick off those seats. The governorship, with Vivek Ramaswamy likely being the nominee, could be a little bit closer, but he's a very good campaigner. He's not the incumbent. There's going to be a less of a MAGA electorate because it's an off year, but I still think it's definitely a winnable race for sure. I'd say it's upper tier 2. There will need to be some investment in Ohio for sure. Georgia, I think, is definitely priority tier 1 because you have a lot of statewide offices you're going to need to win, and the Senate race there as well, you're going to need to win if you want to expand your majority. That's going to be important. And on top of it, you have the state of New Hampshire, which maybe the House races there are not going to be that competitive. I think you do hold the governorship. I think it's kind of like Nevada in that regard. But the main takeaway is the Senate race, which, again, Chris Sununu, he's not going for it, but could Scott Brown make things interesting against Chris Pappas? Yeah, it's possible. So I think you could make the case it's, tier 2, maybe even tier 1. So without further ado, this is the map. So Republicans, they're polling well for the midterms, and this is at a point where there's some economic uncertainty. If things go well from here on out, it's very likely that they start to poll better and possibly could have like a asterisk midterm if this continues. I still think it's going to be a wash. Democrats in the House, it's going to be a complete dogfight for the House for sure. As for the Senate, I think Republicans are going to maintain, if not expand, their majority, and some of these governorships are going to come on a state-by-state basis. So I don't really think you're going to see a wave, even with polarization and redistricting. The Democrat ceiling, even if they do really well, is not very high, to be honest, but that's a little bit besides the point. What we do know is that where Republicans should invest their resources to have the best midterm, in my opinion, California, Arizona, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, and Georgia, those are the tier 1 states. And then obviously the districts of Maine and Nebraska that are competitive are in tier 1 as well. And then the tier 2 states are Washington, Nevada, Alaska, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado, Kansas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Virginia, and New Hampshire, as well as Maine and Nebraska, both at large, and again, to varying degrees for sure. And then tier 3, you have everybody else. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.